Hey, welcome to Home Renovision, the YouTube channel designed to help you guys renovate your homes and get professional results. Today we are talking 4 different kinds of flooring installation, and we're going to cover the whole gambit here. Every technique, every material, every tool, every cost, and when we're done, you're going to be able to pick which is the right flooring project for you, and stay tuned because you might be surprised what your new favorite's going to be. I think we're going to increase value in this kitchen. This is not acceptable. And that is money in the bank. This is where it gets fun. No, that's some old stuff. This is extremely brutal. Loving it. It seems like the largest industry in North America today is the flooring industry. Let's face it, everybody's got flooring that they're not happy with for a lot of different reasons, whether it's performance or quality or sound, or just because it's old and ugly. So everybody wants to put in new flooring, and there's a ton of products on the market. How do you decipher what's best for you? This video is all about that. We are going to cover all the new trends. So we're going to start off with some luxury plank flooring. Now this is not a simple little vinyl tile. This is a luxury vinyl with a cork underlay. This is high-end pricing, and you're probably looking at $3 to $4 a square foot for this stuff. And then we're going to move on to a luxury plank laminate floor, okay? Now this is really high-end, incredible material product here. You can build kitchens and everything else on top of this flooring, and it'll last 40 or 50 years. Now the trick about this, again, it's the $4 to $5 a square foot price range. It gets up there. And then we're gonna go back into the traditional box store click laminate. Now whether it's click laminate or click vinyl, the box store stuff is quick and easy to install, and all of these videos have one thing in common. They all just measure and cut. But there's a ton of installation techniques you're going to need, so we're going to go through all of that stuff with you. And the last thing that we're going to show you is hardwood flooring. Now, I know a lot of people might think that hardwood flooring is a little outside the toolbox, but trust me, watch the video, make sure you take all that information in, because at the end of the day, if you know how to measure and cut, you can install hardwood flooring, and no matter which one of these products you choose, you're most likely going to need to rent a tool anyway at some point. So don't be afraid to buy a nice hardwood floor. You might be surprised which is your new favorite. Is it going to be the luxury vinyl or the luxury laminate? Are you going to go with the old standby and just go with the click stuff because you know it's going to be quick and easy, it's not going to cost you a fortune, maybe in a few years you can change it out for something else? Or are you going to go all in and go for that 3/4 inch gorgeous hardwood floor that'll last forever? You decide, your budget, your house, you pick the floor that's good for you. Let's get going. So in today's video, we are going to install a new plank floor system, and I got a trick for you. This is not MDF, this is not a laminate, this is vinyl. Yes, this is Torley's vinyl floor. It comes with a brilliant texture, cork underlay, super quiet. So if you're looking for that kind of install, stay tuned. There's been a lot of changes in the flooring industry over the last 20 years. Let's face it, the old standard of carpet everywhere and maybe hardwood, tile in the bathroom, it's gone. There are new products coming out, it seems like every 6 months to a year. And again, we have another one here. This is a vinyl plank. Now, a lot of you may have seen vinyl plank available at the local building store or over at like your local Costco. This is not your vinyl plank you're gonna find there. This is the Torley's Everwood Premier. It's a brilliant series. The stuff runs about $5 to $6 a square foot. So beware, if you're looking for a floor that's gonna last a long time, this is a good choice for you. If you're looking for a quick fix, this is probably out of your price range. Now, when you're gonna install a floor like this, you wanna keep 2 things in mind: preparation and then preparation. Okay, it all comes down to how clean your floor is. You can never remove the dirt under a floating floor once you've gotten started. So you always wanna vacuum, do all your sanding on any patches and you're working in the room. Get yourself swept and vacuumed, and double check your floor for squeaks and screws. Keep your drill handy as you're going. If you hear a squeak on the floor, stop what you're doing and take some time, throw some extra screws in, because you don't want to have a squeak on your floor when you're done. That will be almost impossible to fix. Now, I have seen a lot of installation videos related to this type of product or different plank floorings, and they all kind of follow the same theme, right? If you've seen them, they have their little clip system, they have little wedges you put around the perimeter of the room. You try your best to keep things square with that, and to be honest with you, I've tried installing that years ago, and it drove me nuts. So what I did is I developed a better system, and I'm gonna share it with you. First, you gotta pick which wall you want. In most cases, you're gonna run this parallel with the longest wall in the room. In this particular place, it's open concept main floor, so we had two different options we could run with. So the client, we discussed it, they like this direction, so we'll do what the client says. Next, get out your trusty laser, and at both ends of the room, you want to measure off the wall at some point or another, something healthy like 3 inches. All right, we'll do that over here, 3 inches. And here's why. Instead of using wedges, I'm gonna put this level, laser level, on my mark at both ends of the room. If you're working alone, just set something up at the other end where the mark is, so it'll help you to identify when you're on that spot. There we go, bam. Now what I wanna do, just check. Measure along the wall, everywhere you go. And I'm noticing that most of my measurement is pretty consistent. Gets a little tighter in here, plus or minus a quarter. Beautiful. So now I know the wall is relatively straight. There's a bit of a bow here. So when I'm putting the first few boards down, I want to make sure that I'm not sliding underneath the baseboard, but just touching the baseboard here. It'll open up a bit of gap at both ends, and then I'm going to be fine because I'm going to use a quarter round to cover it when I'm done. So if you're like me, you like to do things fast, you don't want to waste your time. What I do is I just start, hit the baseboard, I drop it, there's my first board, done. When I get to my heat register vents, now of course they have the EverClick system with these floors, so it is brilliant. No need to be hammering everything around. Once you fit it together, it's just done. I just mark right on the floor when I'm going, mark my heat register vents. I'd rather drill a hole when I'm done and then come back and use my jigsaw to cut it out, because that helps keep the integrity of all of this together. Because when you're first starting, you know, we all know, I mean, it's hard enough to keep this stuff straight as it is, right? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my handy dandy tool out. I'm gonna cut a few more boards because I like to build 3 or 4 rows at a time. It helps keep everything straight and square, and you're not always running back and forth and fussing around and closing gaps and making adjustments. All right, so here we go. We're ready to cut our boards. Generally, you always want to cut from the left side because that's going to go under the trim. So I want to have a board that is about 3/4 and then a half, and then maybe something that's like around 2/3. All right, that's a good way to start. Keeps the joints away from each other, nice distance. Now there's different ways that you can cut this stuff. You read the instructions online. It says use a knife. Let's try that. And you just score it. God, that's not easy. Hit it again. That just seems dangerous. You can use a chop saw, or you can do what I did, grab my laminate floor cutter and see if that works. Yep. I don't know why the online instructions don't include laminate floor cutters, but that worked brilliant. We're gonna go with that system from now on. So what we're doing here is this just a unit click system, okay? We're just gonna put this stuff together. Really quite simple. The idea is just to get the first couple of rows in. Okay. Now you can see, because this is tongue and groove on both sides, you can't just shove it in with your hands. So there's different techniques. There's this technique where you can do an entire row of the room like this, and then you can lay it in together and you can lay that down. And that works if you're working in a room that's going to be 20 feet long like I am. That system unfortunately isn't going to work for you. trying to maneuver all those boards in at the same time is going to take 3 or 4 people. So if you're working alone, unfortunately the only thing you have left is a tapping block. For me, the best way to make a tapping block is just take a scrap piece of the flooring and cut it down to size. Okay. Now I got both edges that I can work with, all right? So here's the other way to install your board with both joints. Do the short side first, and here's why. This vinyl and cork has a tongue and groove. If you can look at that, that's a really long piece of flooring. If I put that one in and then start tapping from the other side, it takes a lot of force to force that because there's a lot of resistance because of the kind of texture we're dealing with. Now this is gonna operate a lot like my laminate floor video. Little love tap, just to seal the joint. It locks nice and tight. Okay, you don't have to beat the living daylights out of this. Just a little tap, and then all of these joints are locked. Now you'll see the floor moving all over the place when we're doing this. And now, this is where the trick comes in so that you don't have this problem. So generally when you're doing a plank flooring, the problem you run into is everything's moving around as you're using the click system. Because you got to use a certain amount of force to make it work, so these floating floors tend to slide all over the room. To keep that from happening, with vinyl, you can actually screw it down. I would recommend every 6 inches, right near the edge, where your quarter round is going to cover it. Make sure you've lined it up really good. You don't want to overcommit with this program, and then be moving around later. Just grab a few screws for every flank. When you're all done, you can pull the screws out later so that you don't have any bumps where you're putting your quarter round down. I'm just gonna put in our little tapping block that we made. Look at that. That's closing up really nice as the sweat drips off my forehead. Beautiful. All right, so that covers most of the basics of how to install this floor. Of course, you know that when you get to the transitions of the doors, make sure you can slide this underneath your casing or install your casing after your flooring. That's always my preference. And one more thing about this flooring. This particular product, this company's developed a tool for maintenance over time. If you have a damaged piece of flooring like this, and you want to remove it, they have a special stretcher. It's kind of like a rib spreader. And you can put it down on the floor and you can pull the floor apart, and then you can lift the board out and then reinstall a new one. This is why the manufacturer suggests that you have room around the outside of the floor, okay? So that it, not for expansion contraction purposes, but for maintenance purposes, okay? So when you're done doing your floor like this, make sure you pull out your screws, because one day down the road, you might need to make the call, and then I can swing by with my rib spreader and take care of that damage. As a quick note, it doesn't come in every box, but there is instructions and all of the recommendations here. One of the recommendations is to put down a 6mm poly, not as a moisture barrier, but more to help make it easier in case you ever have to do maintenance so that the floor will slide. We have installed 1/4 inch Luan, which is a real smooth surface, and we aren't gonna see the need for the plastic here. So, you know, do that if you feel necessary. One other question you might have is, because it's cork, can I put this directly on my concrete floor in the basement? And the answer is yes. You do not need any plastic when you're putting cork, okay? So just make sure it's not a fresh pour, and make sure that it's a solid surface. In one of the earlier videos, we actually did some floor leveling around where we had cut the concrete open. And so that was necessary because you want to have a nice flat surface for this to go on. You don't want this going up and down because then it makes it really difficult for the locking system to engage. There you go, folks. This is how you install a vinyl floor. Lay it down, click, tap, repeat. Hundreds and hundreds of times. And by all means, if you need one of these cutters, go to the local building store. They will rent it for you. It's a big investment, but if you're just doing 1 or 2 floors in your house, then just go rent the tool. 30 or 40 bucks. You can do most of the house in one day. It's definitely worth the investment. It keeps the dust down. It keeps you running back and forth to the saw. And it'll keep you from slicing your hand open using that knife, because that was ridiculous. Hi, I'm Jeff from Ottawa Design and Build, and I'm here to give you a little tutorial on how to install laminate flooring. We're talking about a medium density fiber or high density fiber laminate. Traditionally, this came out, it looked like a picture of 3 different pieces of wood. It's developed a lot over the years. And now we've got something that looks like wide plank board flooring. Now this is a Torley's flooring product. It's a fabulous quality. The joints in this click lock together and are really tight. You won't see gapping over time. There's a lot of products on the market, a lot of different price ranges, anywhere from $1 a square foot up to $5 or $6. So you get what you pay for. So if you have a 10-year project and you're just looking to make something clean so you can sell your house, by all means, go to the cheaper end. But if you're doing a new build like we are, we're expecting this floor to last a long time. This is going to be a 30 to 40 year floor. We're also installing a bar on top of it, so we can't cut any corners with the quality. So since we're not cutting corners with the quality, we're also using a high quality underpad. This is a very thick piece of rubber. It also has a vapor barrier on it. There's always a vapor barrier on underlay flooring. This product here is good for basement floors and residential use. If you're doing laminate flooring and you're in a situation where you're in a condo or an apartment, you have to get a different flooring that kills the sound. There's a sound transmission rating on that underpad. It's a little more expensive, but generally speaking, if you go to a wholesaler, you can get this kind of product for under 20 cents a square foot. It's not a big expense, so by all means, get the good one. If you go to the building store, you're probably gonna pay 3 to 4 times as much, but don't ever cheap out. Okay, so the bottom of the pad is the gold side, has an adhesive strip so that when you do the next joint, you can tape the pad onto this little bit of leftover foil. So always install the pad in the right direction so that you can add the next layer. Basically, we just roll it out and cut it to fill the space. Now this room's a little dusty, so we're gonna get some footprints. How awesome is that? All right. So the way I do it is I just push it to the wall, find my mark, roll it back to me. Cut both directions and get that out of my way. I'll just fire it underneath the drywall for now so it holds it. All right, and we're good to go. So the basic tools that we need for this project are pretty simple. You should have it: a tape measure, pencil, a hammer, and this is what most people don't have: the cutting tool. Dun, dun, dun. This is the next generation in laminate floor cutters. It's also good for commercial vinyl tile. This thing here has an extension on the arm, multiplies your leverage. So it operates like a guillotine principle. It's just crushing in the gap, and it snaps the board right on the cut line. The cool thing about this is that one person can operate this without having to get up or down, and it creates no dust. This kind of flooring, if you've ever worked with it before and you're using your saw, it's crazy amount of dust. So one of the biggest drawbacks was you always had to cut outside, or you had to wear a mask, or you just got sick and got a sinus infection, and we all learned the hard way. But this tool here is worth its weight in gold. I think it cost me about $400. It's been through the mill a few times here. Still works, haven't had to sharpen it yet. I have nothing bad to say about it. I'll give you a demonstration because I'm gonna need a little piece to start with here. There we go. So when I'm starting my floor, I want to cut just a first piece about 5 or 6 inches off. Done. And I'm going to use this as my nailing block, okay? Because you're going to find that installing this flooring is not an easy task. We are going to go from left to right. If you're doing this alone, I'm going to recommend that you start with first and second row with a half offset. So cut your board in advance. No need to measure. Okay. There we go. And just like any other kind of flooring, you want to pay attention to your H'ing, which is where your joints are meeting up. Now traditionally this locks in nice and simple, right? You just line it up and give it a wiggle. Clicks in place. You heard the click? That's the sound of a good installation. You can see we've got this installed so that it slides underneath the baseboard. We don't want to start against the wall right away. I want to start out here. I'm going to show you why. If you're working alone, or even if you have somebody with you, this can be real tricky. You'll see a lot of guys do this. They'll put that side down there. This also clicks together, all right? And they'll drop it in. And then they go to the next piece. And they're in a bit of a conundrum because this type of flooring is not a lay lock system. I can't just drop that in place. You'll see that there's a tongue here. So the way that this works is that this piece actually has to be backed off a little bit. You've got to force it down, and then you got to drive it into the gap from the other side. When you're starting off by yourself, trying to keep things square, having this board here is in your way. So don't do that. Keep that out of your way. And you want to work back and forth on your first and second row. We're going to cross your room. Important to note, traditionally, you'll find that people like the look of the flooring better. There's that click again. If you're running the grain along the longest wall in the room. Now, that piece that I cut off at the very beginning, I'm going to lock that in. Now I take my hammer. Boom. Perfect. That is a really nice tight fit. Never going to have a problem. Now I take this board. The benefit of this tongue and groove action is that it actually locks from both different directions. Okay? So you get it nice and tight. Put your weight on it. Oh, there we go. Beautiful. All right, so now we've gotten to the end of this wall. I want to take my knife out and trim this under pad back a little bit. And this is just to keep the noise down, okay? So it doesn't matter if it goes all the way to the wall or not. It's okay to be shy. And this here is what we do. This is facing the same direction. When you want to measure your cut, you want to do this by eye. All right, so we're at the end. We want to get our piece. Make sure the tongue and groove is all facing the same way. Then take it and turn it around. So now you're going to be measuring the actual gap with the same piece of wood that's going to be cut and installed there. And since nothing in this world is square, you want to take the shortest or where the contact is with the wall and mark the floor to be cut within 1/4 inch of that. Now because we're using 3/4 inch baseboard, we have a lot of mercy. I mean, I can have this floor come almost 1 inch from the wall and it's still gonna get covered by the time I'm done with all my trim. But for good measure, I like to leave about 1/4 inch there for expansion, contraction. Take it over to the cutter, put your mark right where the blade comes down. Crush it. And now, instead of trying to hammer it in like this, you can just drop that in. This piece, however, is going to be a little trickier because you have no room to get the hammer from the end. So you have to hammer this direction this time. Now, every time you cut a piece, start the next row with the offcut. Save your product, save your time. Here's our piece. Flip it around, make contact with the wall, come back here, measure, cut. And be careful all the time not to chip the corners. If you chip the corners, that piece is no good to you. Nobody wants an ugly piece of floor in the middle of the room. Now, like I was trying to show here, I can't just drop that in. I don't have the room for a hammer. What I can do is the same concept from this side. I can drop that to there. Okay. Oh, here, good note. When you're working with this flooring, keep an eye on the corners, on the back side. If you have debris and it gets caught in these gaps and you force it in, you're going to be breaking everything apart. Your floor will open up on you. So put this down, lay it in place. Now we take our hammering block, put your weight on this other piece of wood. Wood, it's laminate. see that that's not going in very nice. Up against the wall now. After you have about 4 or 5 rows done, take a minute and pull this forward out from underneath the baseboard, and then move your flooring from the other side of the room where you have it stored, pile it all up on the floor. That'll put enough weight on it that when you're hammering those end pieces in, it won't be sliding around anymore. And it maintains that gap that you want underneath your floor and around your perimeter. Try to keep a 1/2 inch gap everywhere you go, and your floor will last forever. Now really, all you need to know now is it's gonna take about an hour to finish this room. Not bad. No dust, no mess, hardly any garbage, and it's gonna be brand new and beautiful. Hey, welcome to Home Renovision DIY. We are a YouTube channel that specializes in helping homeowners do renovations at home, but get professional results. So stay with us for this ride. Today we're talking click laminate flooring. We're gonna teach you all the tips and tricks and secrets so that you can have a quick, clean, fast, professional result that'll last a long time. So before we talk about our product today, let me just encourage you real quick, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, we got a lot of great information on here to help folks out just like you. So today is click laminate flooring. And the reason we're doing this video, because we've done a laminate floor installation, is I think this is the most popular DIY product on the market. There's a lot of people who can install this with minimal amount of tools, experience, and understanding. So we're gonna go through the benefits of why this is such a good product. First of all, it's easy to install. This product just fits into the grooves. The ends drop lock on top of the other piece beside it. And as a result, as long as you stagger your joints properly, you're gonna get a nice tight fit without any corners sticking up. And you can do it yourself at about half the time as the kind of floor where you gotta hit the boards and lock them together. Okay, so this is a great DIY project. You can do the average bedroom in about 3 or 4 hours if you have a helper with you. Okay, it'll probably take the whole day to install the whole floor, cut your doors, install your trims, but it's a one day, you got a brand new room. So this is why this project is popular. Now this particular floor is a 12mm floor, so it is a decent quality. It comes with the underpad already attached to the back, and that takes a whole step out of the project. So before we get started on the flooring, let's talk preparation. Okay, so preparation for doing a new flooring job, of course, is you have to get your existing subfloor in the condition where you're ready to put your new flooring down. That means it has to be tight. You don't want it moving around. This is really old flooring. This is 1.5 inch soft lumber, and it's nailed through the tongue and groove into the joists, which are on 16 inch on center. You can see where all the joints are for the flooring. That helps to identify where the boards are underneath. And the simplest way to do this really is you just go around walking and have somebody observe if the boards are moving. And if they're moving, then what you want to do is line up on the joist line and just drive some surface screws down in there and tighten it all up, okay? Once you've gone through and got your floor nice and tight, keep your drill and screws handy in case you find something along the way, but that's about all you need to do to prep your floor. If you have existing flooring in the room, then I always suggest before you put laminate floor down, remove the old flooring because you don't have the ability to inspect your subfloor. And that's important. If you have holes or you have squeaky points or you have things that are moving around, you want to get that dealt with early because once you put your new laminate floor on, if it's moving around too much, you're going to break the joints and it's not going to last very long. The other thing you want to do before you get started is make sure you sweep and vacuum your room. When you have tongue and groove joints like this that are over 100-year-old, you want to actually vacuum out each one of these gaps because we're going to create an area here where as you step on a floating floor, there will be some air movement underneath the floor, and that'll encourage dirt to blow around. So if you can get it all now, you won't get crunching later. And yes, you just remember, your laminate floor can go on concrete. Just make sure you use a vapor barrier as a part of your underpad, and you can always talk to your floor supplier about getting that product. Okay, so let's just talk about laminate product itself real quick. It comes in a variety of different thicknesses that are available and a variety of widths. I like to have about a 4-inch board. I find the bigger ones in a lot of floors, there's just too much movement and it can't follow the contour enough without having hollow spots underneath. So that's my own personal preference. This particular floor has got like a hand scrape texture. Some of them have a wood grain texture. Some of them have no texture at all. There's shiny, there's flat, there's a variety of differences. Some of this product is even good for wet areas, so make sure if you're doing it in a bathroom or a laundry area, check the product, make sure it's made for that area. The reason I like laminate instead of vinyl is really it comes down to cost. This is the most cost-effective flooring on the market. If you're looking for a quick solution to brighten up a room or to clean up a space, this is the way to go if you have any kind of budget at all. This product I actually got a bit of a deal on. It was end of inventory. It was $1.69 a square foot and it has the underpad already attached. So I have nothing else that I need on this project. And the way it installs is just boom. Drop it together and it sits snug together. It has a tongue and it has a groove. And the boards will continue to install in like fashion. You just line it up. Okay, and snap it together. Done. That's the installation procedure. So you just do that a few hundred times and the room is finished, right? So what we're going to do now is we'll show you how to lay it out. Because I get questions like this a lot. Which direction should I go? Do I go on the long wall, the short wall? Do I start at the door or the other side of the room? And the answer is simple. I prefer to start on the longest wall that you can start on because the grain of this long board on a long wall aesthetically is pleasing. Now in this situation, the room is a little bit more square, so we're going to go in the same direction as the existing boards are now, and that'll help it to follow the contour of this old house that's here as well. It also gives us the ability to come to the entrance door in a situation where my door is going to be here and these boards will finish up into that space. That's a lot easier way to finish at a door. If you come this way, then your cut has got to be exactly perfect. Cutting into the jamb and around the baseboard, it's quite intricate. But if you come at it this way into your door, you'll find that you only have one cut on each side of the door. It makes the installation really quick and simple. Okay, so this is going to be kind of how to install flooring for beginners. First, if you don't do this on a regular basis and you haven't got good callus on your knees, get yourself some knee pads, okay? These are really nice, they're soft, they don't have any hard cover on them, you're not rolling off all the time. Just make sure you're always sitting up nice and tall. The elastic straps that hold this on really tend to pinch if you're sitting down on your feet a lot. So try to avoid doing that. Next, remember there's two ends. There's one that's got just a square end here that's designed to drop on top of the lock, and there's the one here that's got the extension on the board. And because you want to install a floating floor with room to expand and contract, you've got to be careful because if you put this right up against your baseboard, you've already got a gap, all right? So what you want to do is maybe start the flooring on the other end of the room, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a technique where we're going to build the first few rows, and then we're going to pull it off the wall where we want it, and then we're going to set a bunch of our wood on top of the floor to keep it from moving around while we build the rest of the room. So before we get started, we're going to remember that we want to have these joints moving and changing location on a regular basis. When we want to have the gaps, the distance between those joints significant enough that there's strength being transferred from one board to the next so that the floor doesn't come apart. Now, in order to do that, we want to remember that this area here with the tongue is going to be what we call the finished edge, the clean edge, and we want the cut to be on inside of the board. So I'm going to start off by cutting 3 boards, 3 different areas. And yes, this is my Roberts cutter. It's like a guillotine. Anybody can use this. Or like this. Like this. Or like this. Or like this. Just remember, when you're cutting with these tools, do it outside, the dust is horrible, and wear your safety glasses. I'll cut one board at half, one board at a third. Okay, and then one board at 2/3. And this gives me the ability to start 4 rows at a time. And that way when I'm done these first 4 rows, then I can fix the spacing and put those other boards on top. Okay, so once you get started, there are basically 2 design options that you have. And here, I'll just lay them out real quick. One is it's a constant step. And you go from big board to smaller board. Oh. When you see junk like that, make sure you blow it out. You don't want to have anything in the joint. Okay, smaller board to smaller board to smaller board, blah, blah, blah. And then the whole process will start all over again. All right, so your floor is constantly stepping down. And that pattern reoccurs over the floor Some people like that look. Personally, I think it looks a little bit too intentional and man-made, and I'm not a big fan. I like to mix it up a little bit. I like to go long, short, long, short. And that's just my preference. There's no real right or wrong way. Now we're going to show you the installation technique. So you put it in the groove, you slide it along to help make sure that you get good contact, and then drop it down, okay? And you'll notice that things aren't going to sit really snug right away. Just put some weight on one side and work this, pulling it in that direction while you're pushing down, and everything will sit nice. And then you put the next board on, and until we get some weight on this floor, it's going to want to move around. Okay, so you can use your leg. Just do it like that. And then we'll go short again. Now we have something we can work with. Now these first few offcuts, oddly enough, what I'm going to do with them is I'm going to just set them aside until near the end of the job. And we'll use these in the last few rows when we get to the other end of the room. I just don't like to have them in the way. All right, so we're at a point now where we're just about ready to get into production. We want to finish off our couple rows, and we always have our big tongue sitting in front of us, okay, as you're building. And so the way that you're going to measure from here to the wall is you turn the board in the reverse direction, set the board up to the wall, take a black magic marker, and right at the edge of this corner, I want you to take off a 1/4 inch, which is basically the extension of the tongue on the first board, plus another 1/4 inch. You want to make that short on purpose. Here's why. That's going to be the gap. That second 1/4 inch gap, that's going to be the gap that's there for the floor for a little bit of expansion contraction. Now generally, if your house has conditioned space, like air conditioning and heating system, there's not a whole lot of expansion and contraction that goes on. But if you live in a house where you don't have air conditioning and you get a hot summer, then you're going to see that your floor will have varying degrees of how it fits. So remember, the hotter and more humid it is, the bigger your floor gets. So you can make your adjustment based on your condition. Some people go with a 1/2 inch gap around the outside of the room and use a 3/4 inch quarter round just because they're in extreme conditions. But traditionally, a 1/4 inch will do the job. Okay, so here we go. Now there's my offcut, all right? I don't need that now, but I'm going to use that to start another row over here, all right? This is how it works. So every time you cut a board, after you've done your first few and set them aside, every board you cut now, you put one in on one side and you start a row on the other side. And that way you don't have anything going in the garbage. Again, we'll just set that down and we'll grab another board. Now remember, I'm starting tight on the other wall, and so when we get the first few rows in, we'll slide it over and close the gap a little bit. But for now, we just want to get this nice and tight, and then we'll pull it across and then drop it down. And just giving it a little tap like that will help to manipulate everything into position. Here we go again. We'll set that against the wall, and we'll mark a 1/4 inch after the base. So there's the finished floor, there's the end of the rough floor. We'll add a gap, and we'll mark our floor there. So here's our little piece. So everybody who is wondering, is that kind of cutter going to be able to cut me just a little piece? The answer is yes. It goes in the same way. Slide it over and then lay it flat. Done. And if you see the edge of the board has any damage, break it off and clean it out. Anything that's got damage like that isn't going to close properly. Just push it to the corner. Remember, you're going to be sweeping as you go. There we go. Now my space is shorter than the board. So again, I turn it around and I measure same way. There's my unfinished wood on the floor, finished board, and my gap. Mark it. Now most flooring, when you're clicking it together, they call it a click flooring because the flooring actually makes a click sound when it's sitting right. So this is going to be the secret. We're going to see if we can get the microphone on here to pick this up. There it is. Okay, there we go. There, that way everything fits perfect. Now the secret to doing a job like this is be 100% happy with everything you do before you go to the next one. If you're not happy with what you've just done, take it apart and try to figure out why you're not happy. You might find that something's not tight enough. There might be some debris in the gap so it's not closing properly. But if you keep moving forward, there's no way to go back and fix it later. So we basically have our first 5 rows done. And before we go any further, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just take this original cutoff piece here, put my weight back here and give it a tap. Now I'm damaging this board and it's fine. I'm going to treat it like garbage. But what I want to make sure is that the first few rows, everything is nice and tight. One of the things about the click lock system is just because it's in doesn't mean it's in perfect. It can open up and have a gap, right? So that's, that looks good. You hear that click? Okay, so that's down, there's a gap. Now listen, that's click lock, okay? And when you're doing the first few rows, it's hard to get that click sound because things aren't perfectly straight. So you need your first few rows before you can straighten it out. So what I suggest, before you go ahead, give everything a little bit of a love tap. Make sure everything's clicked in nice and tight. Then you won't be disappointed and your floor won't open up after the fact. Real quick, we better show you how to move your floor into position. Because remember, we want to have a consistent gap on both sides and the back wall. Now, after you do 5 rows, it can be pretty heavy. And you might find that the finish on the laminate is too slippery to get a good grip. And this is where tape comes in. Okay? Literally, hold the tape down and hold the edge of the tape, and you can pull that floor right off the wall. All right? Now you can also push it, but if you try to pull it, it might be a little bit difficult for you. So use the tape. The other thing you can do, if you have a board that separates and you need to kick it back into position, just put a little bit of tape down. And the reason you want this helps give you a little bit of, little something for your shoe to kick on. And you can use that to manipulate your floor. Put that into position, okay? So we'll check our gap on both ends. I'm liking that. There, perfect. So now, to keep this from moving around on us, we want to add weight. Each of these boxes weighs approximately 60 pounds, okay? And when you're done packing all of the rest of the flooring for the room on there, you're doing 2 things. A, you're getting it out of the way because you're installing a floor in the room. And B, you're putting enough weight on that floor that you've just put down and put into position to keep it from moving around. Now remember, because this is a drop and lock system, we don't need to use a hammer anymore. Now that we've got it started and straightened out, we've got it all tightened up, now we're ready to go and build ourselves a floor. Now it's time for the time lapse. And then we'll be able to show you the tips and tricks for dealing with around the doors and fitting your doors after the fact. Most likely some of these will need to be cut down. Okay, so we're done there, basic square footage of the room. Now we've come into a couple of places where it's nice to talk about finishing details. You can see it only took us about 20 minutes, maybe 30. You know, so if you're new to this and you're just starting it for your first time, maybe expect that to take about an hour. But I tell you, once you get used to the cutting and you get a rhythm going, we can get doing that pretty quick. And if you have a helper, it makes it all that much faster. So here we are. This is what we call quarter round. And if you look at it, it looks like 1/4 of a piece of pie. And that's what it's basically called. And we use this as our trim molding to close up from floor to baseboard. All right? And the way we do it is the inside corner is going to get mitered at a 45-degree angle. And over here, we're going to bring it right up to where the door casing meets. Okay, so we're just going to make a pencil mark here where the door casing is. And we're going to cut this one on 30 degrees. And that opens it up a little bit nice like that. looks clean, looks finished. If it's cut square, it looks stupid. So it's a nice soft angle and it'll work really well. And what we use to install it is a brad nailer. And we're just using 1¼ inch nails. Now this setup here with an air tool with a gun, the hose, and the compressor, you can actually get at the local Home Depot, the Husky machine. I think when I bought it, it came with the hose and a nail gun. I can't remember exactly, but I think the whole outfit is less than $200. And of course, once you have a hose, you can get interchangeable tools. You can get your stapler for the 1/4 inch plywood. You can get ratchets, so you can do power tools to work on your cars as well. So having a compressor, the compressor itself is $100. You don't need to spend a fortune on these kinds of tools. I'm rough on it. I probably go through one a year because I don't treat it well. But for me, to have something that is that versatile for $100 a year, that is just money in the bank. As a homeowner, if you actually take care of your tools, it'll last you a lifetime, okay? So you can do all the trimming in your house, all your finished carpentry, anything you need. And you can also put a little blower on the end of this, and you can use it as an air broom. And you can clean things off and clean the dust out of the room, clean out your computer and everything else with that too. So very handy. Definitely suggest having that. That's one of those tools that every homeowner should have if you're gonna do DIY. You don't wanna spend your day running around with little finishing nails and a hammer, trying to hammer all these trims in like it's 1950. That'll just take you forever, and you're gonna waste your whole weekend doing something that could be done in about 10 minutes. All right, so here we go. Once we got our measurement, we just run down to the saw, cut it, stick it in place, throw one of these brad nails in every 16 inches, every 2 feet, and we're done. So let's talk transition, because this is the one place in the whole room where homeowners always do it wrong, and it screams DIY. They don't cut the casing and slide the floor underneath. And the reason for that is they probably just don't know what tool to use or how to get that job done properly. Or maybe you've hired somebody to do some work in your house before and they were lazy and didn't do it properly. But here's the secret. Take your flooring, put it upside down, and you buy one of these. Now this is called a dovetail saw, okay? Because of the way that you can hold the handle flush on the ground and still cut without rubbing your knuckles off. It's also reversible, left and right. You push this down and you swing it around, and then it locks in position to cut the other way, okay? So all we do is set it on top of the flooring. And the reason we use this piece upside down is just to measure the depth. And this is not about strength, it's about speed, okay? It's a fine-tooth saw. And once you get to the jamb, which is this material here, you can stop. Or you can keep going. You can cut right through the whole jamb. It doesn't really matter. But the goal is to get to the other side of this casing clean through. So you're probably going to be cutting some of your baseboard as well. And that's fine. There's no damage going to be caused here by doing this. And when you get near the end, instead of trying to put all your force on the front, try to use the push against the heel like this kind of motion, and then you'll get the back of that cut off. All right. And the way you can tell if it's done, just take your trusty knife. There's probably some caulking and adhesive in there. Here we go. There we go. Now we got the whole thing. It might be just a little bit left. And you can take your knife and cut that little bit of trim left. Once you got it all cleaned out, now you'll see your flooring will slide underneath your trim, and you'll get a perfectly clean line, and there's no need for caulking. This is absolutely beautiful. If you add caulking to this after the fact, you're actually gonna make it look ugly. So it detracts from the situation. Remember, the only reason they use caulking in the first place is because somebody cut the hole too big and they had to close the gap. So if you use this kind of fine-tooth saw, the saw blade itself is so thin, it's like microscopic, the difference that's gonna be left in your floor. Now, if you don't have one of these, you can go to the store for about 20 bucks and pick one up. Or if you have a PVC saw, same effect. It's a fine-tooth saw, thin blade. This is the cheap little pull saw from Irwin. Fine-tooth saw, same effect. All you do is just set the floor there, and you can do the same effect, okay? That'll do the same thing. All right, these are 10 bucks. They're a little flimsy, but if you're a DIY homeowner, sometimes it's not what you can buy, but what you can use that works. So as long as it's a fine-tooth flexible saw, same process, you'll have a great result too. Let's talk about our transition. Now, this flooring is only going in this room. I'm not carrying it into the rest of the house. We're using a different flooring for that. So there will be a transition. And the rule of thumb is this: when you're doing a transition anywhere in your flooring, you want that transition to be right in the middle underneath the door. So here I'll show you. Here's the door jamb. This represents the outside of the door. That represents the inside of the door. You want your flooring to go right to the middle where the transition is. Except, since this is a laminate product, the transition is going to look different. It's going to be about a ½ inch wide. It's going to be a metal track that goes screwed down to the floor, okay? And then there'll be like a T-molding, and it'll snap into that metal track, and it'll go over top of each of the laminates. So, in fact, we want to go right to the jamb with our flooring, okay? We don't want to go into this area, because the transition itself will bridge the gap from here to here. Knowing that, because transitions traditionally are 1.5 inches, a door is 1.25 inches. So as long as your flooring comes up to the edge of that, you're going to be fine. All right? So in order to do this, same thing, we turn this around, we put our finished floor there, okay, and we're going to mark right there. We're going to cut exactly to fill here. And in this particular case, we're not going to use our guillotine because we want to get a nice clean cut. In this situation, I'm going to use the chop saw. So here's our 1/4 round, and here's our mark with our 30 degree. So we're going to set our saw to 30 degrees. I'm going to lock it in place. And I'm just going to set my blade up. There we go, that's done. And then I'm going to push this all the way to the other side. Set it to 45, which is my inside corner miter. And the idea here is I want the blade to cut from the tip going down, so I don't make it any shorter. Now that piece is ready to install. So here's the piece of flooring. This is the one that goes into the room, and this is where we're going to finish off at the door. Now just a note, this baked on finish here that comes from the factory, this is a lot stronger than the kind of finish that you get on the site finish floor. This is baked on, it's very much an enamel. You want to cut your board standing up when you can, okay? If you're going to use the saw for cutting your wood, get it standing up, line up your saw, and you'll see that you bang into it, you're going to have to move the guard out of the way. Get the saw starting and go slow. There you go. Now that's a finished cut I can live with. Perfect. Now as a rule, when I'm doing flooring, I like to do my 1/4 round as it's available. Probably an OCD issue, to be perfectly honest, but it's just nice to see it cleaned up and finished. So what you do is you put your gun in the middle and you push down, and then you roll it towards the inside a little bit. Okay? You don't actually want to nail through the flooring into the subfloor, and you don't want to ever nail underneath an electrical plug in case the wire is coming up from underneath. Move away, and just put one every, whoops, 16 inches every 2 feet, just to make sure it's nice and tight. Because this is a click laminate floor, you can actually cheat here just a little bit. You see here, we can set it on top of the groove and then slide it towards it. All right, now it's not going to want to sit in there perfectly. So what you have to do is you got to lift this side just a little bit so you can get this one to click in. And you can really pull and find that it's not going to happen. Every once in a while you're going to want to hammer something. Keep a little cut off handy. Okay. And the reason this works great is because the contour of the tongue and groove is exactly the same, so you aren't going to damage the face of the board. Done, locked, perfect, nice and clean, right up to where the transition is going to be. That's how you finish a floor. This is easy. From this side of the flooring, you get your body low, get your angle in, slide it over, put your fingers in there in the groove, pull while you wiggle down. Perfect every time. When you're on this side of the wood, it's so much easier. That's why when you're starting, it takes a little time, but from this side, it's just that easy. So you'll see, as I was laying the flooring here, what it is, I just marked where the floor grate is. And to make my life simple, I'm going to cut it out after the fact. I just find it easier to install. All right, bring my jigsaw over, set the blade in that hole. And I'm using a 3-inch bit, just so you know, 3/8. And then we just go. Okay. And this is why I like to do it after the fact, because I can cut this perfect every time. Okay, so we are about, I don't know, 2/3 way through this project now. And that's as far as the flooring is concerned. We've got a few more details left I want to discuss, and these are really important. One of them is your doors. You need to consider, do the doors still function after the new floor is in? And you want to know that in advance, because if you bring your flooring right up to the door and then it won't open, it's really difficult to get it back out again. So do a double check, make sure you got some space. Okay, this door is not going to clear. And so what we're going to do is I'll show you my system. I'll lay a piece of flooring in front of it. And if you want to take a good look at this pencil, if I hold it like that, I actually get an extra almost 1/4 inch. I'll hold it like that and mark the door on top of the flooring, so that when I cut this door, I'm not just cutting it to barely fit, I'm cutting it so that it will completely work. And I'm also going to double check with the door open, because old houses are notorious for having different heights and different variations. So just double check, and here it actually clears. So we know that we're opening from a high spot to a low spot. So if I take that door off and I cut it in that position, it's going to function wonderful. So we want to get that out of the way right away. So the way I remove my hinge pins is I use a drill bit. Just come at it from the side here. Once you get a little bit, you can just use the claw and the hammer. Pop it out and you're good to go. And just, here we go. We're gonna get this right out of the room. And when we're all finished, then I'm gonna set up and I'll cut the door and I'll show you how to get that reinstalled. So now that we've got all the tools reconfigured, we've changed our workstation, we're putting our cutting station. I've got a moving blanket down here on the floor. Just because it's a new floor and it's got a nice durable finish doesn't mean you want to be taking any chances. So always cover your new floor surface when you're working on it. And this gives us a chance to just catch up with our sweeping again. Remember, preparation, preparation. As we're working, we're creating dirt and blowing dust around. So now's a great time to just clean your surface one more time before we go to finish off. Okay, so really, there's only 2 steps left to doing a floor that you're going to need to know, and that's one is the closet area. It has a unique challenge that's associated to closets, and that is your closets usually come and build into the room. So now we have this wall dividing one section of flooring to the other. And because we're coming this way, we're going to have this intersection that you need to think, you need to pay attention in advance and come up with a strategy for doing this. Because as you can see, this board goes in here, and that's nice and lovely, right? Done. We can cut and install that last piece. And then I can put in that board. What about this one? You know, am I just supposed to take a jigsaw and cut the middle out and try to hammer it in? I can't do that, okay? So what you want to do is realize that in this situation, you're going to want to install the floor from the middle, going in both directions, which is a little contrary to what we've been showing. And there's a secret to doing this. So you plan to go from 2 different directions. Because it's a drop lock, this board you want to start right here off the jamb, okay? And this board is the one you want to cut and measure first. And if you cut and measure that board first and get that installed from that side and then use a tapping block to push it underneath the trim, we used our saw and cut all that trim out, okay? We actually took our dovetail saw and cut all the way through the entire casing, all the way up through the baseboard, all the way around this side. Okay? The reason we can do that is because we're going to be adding that shoe mold on all the base. And so it's not going to cause us any trouble, but it will give us the flexibility to push this trim, to push this flooring underneath. So what I want to do is I want to measure here first, get my marker, mark my spot where it'll slide underneath the baseboard and the casing. Just to make sure I'm going to be okay, I want to measure from the jamb to the flooring. It looks like my mark is 2 3/4. Okay, good. I've got lots of room. Okay. And then I want to bring this right up till my finished edge is in line with this jamb, because that's what that's going to connect to. All right, and you can just kind of eyeball this to begin with, right there. And then we can cut this just past the corner. Remember, we're going to use shoe mold. We're quarter round here, so it doesn't matter. Give ourselves a little bit of room. And then set my marker. And then I'll just pull. Okay. Now I have my cut. And I'm just going to run down to my skill saw set up outside. And of course it's outside because that dust is really brutal. And I'll cut this piece, and then we can come, we'll install it, measure and cut the other piece. And I'll show you all the tricks so you can finish this off. We're going to start with the middle of the floor instead of the edge. We'll get it up to where we want it. Get it into our groove properly. Lock it in place. Now, what we want to do is take our hammer and take one of your short offcuts, line it up underneath, and then use the cutoff area as a tapping block. Remember that the contour of the tapping block exactly matches the rest of the laminate. So if you leave it flush to the ground and you hold this together, you'll have a perfect transfer of energy without causing any damage. Now you can see it's underneath the contour here, so no caulking necessary. Anywhere here, we're going to get the quarter round shoe mold. So you can cut yourself a little bit generous on the back side here. Make sure you have lots of room to make this joint. And again, get it in place. Perfect. Because this is a click lock, you can actually lift this edge a little bit so you can get this in. Okay? And just give it a yank. Snap it in. Boom. Done. Look at that. That's beautiful. Now we can go back with our cutoffs. Make sure you establish your gap at the wall. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And then this is just a matter of measuring cut to finish. So here we are. We're going to do another quick little time lapse. We're going to get to the end of the project. We're going to do all the cuts and starts and finishes. Make sure our Hing, which we call it, which is our joint lines, are staggered and mixed and look nice. Okay, so now we're pretty much down to the last step, aside from cutting the door, which is coming up next, for installing your floors up against the wall. Obviously, the gap that's left is not consistent with the width of the board, so we can't use our cutting tool. We can't use our chop saw to cut this wood, so we need to do something else. Now, I'm going to suggest if you have a table saw, that's the best tool for the job. You could also use a skill saw. You can actually take this board and you can clamp it to something else and then run your skill saw and cut the piece off. You could use a jigsaw if you had to. But the point is, anything that will cut something long and in a straight line will do fine. You're not going to see the cut line because it's going to be covered by that quarter round that we showed earlier. So don't be too concerned about how perfect this is. And give yourself a little bit of space to work with, all right? The biggest mistake people make here is they make it too tight. And then they have to fight with it to get it in. They damage their baseboards. And then they're going to have issues with the expansion and contraction because it's too tight. So the first thing you want to do is find your two pieces, get them measured and cut to length so they can fit comfortably in the space. And now you have your template, okay? Now it's time for measuring tape. I'm going to measure from wall to here, not to here. All right? And that'll make a smaller space than what you need, and it'll leave that 1/4 inch gap that you want to have after you're done installing your flooring. So measure your gap, which here to the finished flooring is 1 3/4 inches, but to the extension of the groove here It's only 1.5 inches. And then you're gonna take your measuring tape and measure from finished flooring to 1.5 inches and make your mark. Okay? Does that make sense? So we're actually measuring the smallest part of the gap and cutting from finished flooring, so we left with the 1/4 inch on when we're all finished. Here it is, 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches to 1.25 inches. So at each end, it's a different depth. So I have 1.25 inches on one end, 1.5 inches on the other. Take one of your flooring boards and set it up. And this is one of the reasons why you want to take that 1/4 inch off. It's nice to have a little bit of mercy here, okay? Connect your dots, and that'll be your cutting line for your table saw. All right? Now this one is a little bit simpler. It's just 1.5 inches on both sides. That one you can just make your mark, set your fingers in the groove, and pull. Okay? So now we have our 2 pieces. We're gonna go down to the table saw, we'll get that ripped, and then we'll come in and drop them in. And when drop them in, I mean literally the same process. You're gonna set your tongue in the groove, and you're just gonna give it a wiggle as you set it down. And that's all there is to it. Okay, so the last step of the flooring before we cut the doors and install them is just to lay down the strips that we cut. And of course, we cut it short on purpose. Remember to watch your gap at the end, and you just lay it in. Now, this is not completely done. It's not set down tight. So use your knife, get a little forward pressure, okay, while you're pushing down. There we go. And if you're not sure if it's down enough, you can always just go like this with the tap block. Give it a shot. That'll lock it in nice and tight. Remember, you're gonna have 1/4 round going on here to cover it all up. So don't be too picky. Don't be too hard on yourself. As long as you can see the gap closing, see? See the gap closing? Push it down. When you push it down, if the gap opens, push it forward again until you can push on it without the gap opening up. There we go, we got the click action. You heard that? Click, click, there. When you hear that noise, you know you're good as gold. And then you just take your 1/4 round and cover it all up. So one of the benefits of this product is now the room is done, and that's the only garbage we're throwing out. I love not buying material that goes in the garbage. Okay, so here's a little bonus feature for this video. And it's kind of necessary because in a lot of cases when you're adding a 12mm laminate, you need to cut your doors down. Okay, so because we marked the surface of the door that you're going to see from the room, before you get started, you're going to want to protect the door, especially if it's already finished paint, from the marks caused by the saw. Okay, if this is a bifold door and you're not going to see the back side of it and you can mark the back side instead, I would suggest to do that. But in this situation, these kind of circular saws have a steel plate, and that's what keeps it from going all wild and wonky on you. And that steel plate is going to be dragging across your finished paint and make a mess. So cover it up in some tape real quick. Here's our pencil line. You're going to want to set the depth of your saw relatively the same as the door. It'll decrease the amount of chipping that it's going to cause. And doors are 1.25 inches, so we'll set this off for 1.5 inches. That'll be more than enough. Make sure that you're going to get past your hinge, or you'll have to cut from the other side, and that's a little trickier. Here we go. Now we can set up our mark here. This saw in particular, that line, that 0, is where the blade is going to cut and remove. So we can set that right on our pencil line. Set the blade depth on that almost too perfect. All right, now we can remove our tape. Our door's in great shape. We can use that just to rub the door real quick so that it's nice and sanded. That's it, time to stick it back on. All right, so generally, when I remove a door, I leave the pins nice and handy. And all you do, stick the top in, all right? And then you can work on the bottom. There we go. Perfect. Sometimes they have a core that's about 1 inch or so. And when you cut that off, you can actually peel the face of the door off the core and reinstall it with glue and a couple of nails. In this situation, that core has been cut because it's already a custom door. It's been thrown out. Now we're cutting it again. If there was any core left, it'd be so small it wouldn't have been worth worrying about. But if you have the time and energy and you still have a core, by all means, feel free to reinstall it. If you're worried about spiders or mice, whatever, getting up in the door and making a home there, you can always use a little low foam expansion window and door foam, and you can seal the bottom of your door and then trim it off later. So today's video, we are going to teach you some really cool tips and tricks for installing hardwood flooring in your home. So by and large, the most common type of flooring that is in the world today is hardwood flooring. And I know that in North America, we tend to try to move away from that a lot recently. There are a lot of products on the market, especially for the DIY crowd. You know, you've got your laminate floors, which was supposed to be a cost-effective option instead of hardwood if you were changing out carpet, for instance. And that was true to a certain extent, but it doesn't have the lifespan that hardwood has. And then we have vinyl plank and sheet vinyl flooring. We have carpeting. We have cork flooring. They've come out with bamboo. But listen, let's just get back to the basics. When you break it all down, no matter what kind of flooring you're talking about, your cost per square foot is really the first thing you start to think about. So aside from performance, the cost is the biggest issue, right? Hardwood flooring runs $6, $7 a square foot. Well, there's a lot of products out there now that are competing with that price point that aren't even wood. So engineered hardwood is about the same price. There are a lot of laminate products out there that are luxury products, right? And they're all getting up in the $5, $6 range. So when it comes down to it, a high quality product, whether it's wood or vinyl or laminate, is gonna be about the same price for install. And then one of the benefits of this is it doesn't require any kind of a subfloor material. So you factor that into your cost, you end up with a pretty cost-effective piece of flooring, and it comes pre-finished. So you have the ability to pick whatever color you like, and you also have this option. 10, 15, 20 years from now, you want to change the color, sand it down, and you can refinish the floor on site. And that's not something that no other kind of flooring product has the flexibility to do, which is to be renewed on site. So this is a floor that will be here 100 years from now unless somebody decides to rip it out for no apparent reason. So at the end of the day, hardwood flooring I think is still your best option unless it's in a wet area. But if you're a homeowner and you want to do a DIY hardwood floor, we're going to show you all the tips and tricks today so that you're not going to be intimidated by doing something that would have traditionally be called carpentry. And this is just flooring installation. Yes, you need a couple carpentry tools, but it's not all that tricky. And when you'll see when we get into this that you too can do this at home and you can rent the tools to get it done. It is a perfect DIY project that you can tackle in a weekend and still have plenty of time to put your furniture back in order before you get busy with the next week. So like any flooring installation, the key is in the preparation. So before we can put the new hardwood down, we got to rip up the old floor. And in this case, that means sheet vinyl, and it has got to go. This stuff is just butt ugly. And it is just that easy. Special note, be very careful. These staples are extremely sharp. I would suggest having a roll of electrical tape on hand so when you pierce your hand, you can stop the blood. Because when you poke yourself with one of these bad boys, it's a deep cut. I'm gonna put a weak spot in it. when you're installing flooring. Your subfloor doesn't need to go right to the drywall. Hell, it doesn't even have to go right up to the baseboard. You're always gonna put flooring on it. Feel free to install your subfloor a little bit shy of the end wall here. Man, that is just frustrating. I mean, if you're gonna measure and cut, make it a little smaller than you need. It's not necessary to go put tight into the wall. It just drives you nuts the next time you go to try to change it. Oh yeah, that was really installed to last. Great adhesion. Who are you kidding with that? See, it's supposed to be that easy. Be careful when you're on the side lifting the floor. If you slip and it's under pressure, it'll slap you. That'll put a whole row of holes in a leg. So when you're doing hardwood floor, it's about the same approach to installing as any other type of flooring. You want to have a clean surface, you want to have it prepped, you want to sweep it and vacuum. Make sure you vacuum, and the reason I love vacuuming is because it's kind of the last opportunity to bump into something on the floor, and it'll tell you if you have a staple sticking out or something like that. Now, this type of flooring, it's tongue and groove construction, okay? That's an end cut. I don't like that. What we're gonna do is just discuss real quick how to lay this out. I mean, you've got to have some sort of reasonable approach to the situation, correct? So here's what we're gonna need to get started. Again, you want to know the end from the beginning. So one of the fancier ways you can do it is you can buy one of these wooden grates that's designed with the tongue and groove in mind, and you put that over top of your hole and you finish your floor right into it, okay? Now in this particular situation, we are coming up to an existing hardwood floor. That floor was started with a full board with the groove exposed, which is lovely because our wood has got a tongue on one side, and so our nailing direction will be like this, and that'll slide right into it. So what I want to do, because I'm in a hallway, and even if it was a larger room, because I'm going to be going this direction, and I'm going this direction just because of the simplicity of a hallway when you run along the long wall is really difficult to get a straight line. And it's almost impossible to stitch into the existing flooring unless I was to come straight off of it like this. But the truth is the wood that we're installing is a little different tone. They don't make that color anymore. So one of the ways we're going to help hide that is by going in a different grain, because wood in a different grain, even when it's the same color, looks different. So this will help it to blend. So what we want to do is just line up a few pieces, all right? Because I don't want to start my floor in the back of the closet and work this way. It'll be impossible to have this flooring square to that flooring. And I want this nice and square so that all of my pieces are fit up nice and tight against that other floor. And I don't want to have these occasional gaps that open up. So these gaps are really dramatic, but the more square you are, the better that looks. So we don't want to even be half a degree off of the angle. And the way we do this, there we go, that's perfect, is I want to have my full piece into the side of this register, which is somewhat flexible. I mean, it can move around a little bit, right? And I want to have these square to this, so I want to start in this area. But if I start in the middle of the floor, how am I going to go this way? Because the way that the nailing system works is the hardwood nailer, which is going to be our air tool of the day, sits on the floor, right on the edge here, and it fires a nail on an angle through that tongue and into the floor. Okay? So in order to set this up so that I can be really pretty here, perfectly square here, I want to just squeeze all these together. All right? Nice. What I'm going to do is I'm taking my square, putting it in the groove. Okay? That'll help keep it nice and square. And I'm going to run it up against this wood until it's all nice and perfectly square. All right? It doesn't get any more square than this. Right there. That's my spot. I'm going to take this one piece of wood. All right. Just confirm it. I'm loving the way that closes up. I'm loving everything about this. So there's my start. I'm just going to pencil that in for now. Now, the way I'm going to start my floor is I am going to actually screw down a piece of wood here. And I'm going to start nailing everything inverted going into the closet so that I can fill from a square position here to the other floor, nailing in the right direction. And then when I come back, I'm going to take this little piece of wood here. I'm going to demonstrate how this works. When I come back from nailing to that wall, I'm going to take this piece of wood and I'm going to slip it into the groove like that and turn it around and then butt into the existing nailed down flooring and then start nailing the other direction to the other end of the hall. This is how you can start in the middle of the room. And this is so key. When you're coming up against a finished wood, you want to start where this is. So if you're doing a bedroom and your bedroom door is near the end wall, but there's a closet off of that, you don't want to start on the far wall and work your way out of the room, because when you get to the door, it's a transition nightmare. Take the few minutes it takes, set things up, square off to existing hardwood flooring, buy a couple slip tongues. These things are pre-made. They're like $3 each. You can't go wrong. And you put those in and you can reverse the direction of the wood. So I can start square, nailing the proper direction into the end of the closet, and then I can come out here, slip tongue, turn it around, and then finish all the way to the other end of the wall. That way, your joints and your seams are all going to be perfect. I mean, on the money perfect. And take the time to measure off with the register, because now I don't have any ugly cuts. I can put all of that in with full pieces of wood, and this is going to be perfect. Now, these registers are pre-designed to be exactly the same thickness of the piece of wood from corner to corner. So if I can set this up where my register will start right off the tongue, then I'll finish right off the piece of wood with no cuts. So the only cut you have to do is on your saw is the end cut, and that's in behind here. All of this this can all be full pieces of wood, right? Take your variation of sizes, and when I'm nailing my floor in, I can actually coming right in here like this and make everything perfectly tight. And that's how you get a perfect installation. There, that's the joist line there. So now we have something that's incredibly strong. So quick recap here before we get started, because we want to remove everything out of the area that we're not going to be using. So once we have the job set up, you really want to reduce the number of tools you're using to just your nailer and just your hammer, because there's almost no need for anything else in the room other than a marker. And I always suggest using a black marker to make marks on wood, because you will not see a pencil. Now, we have measured off from our grate. We've squared off to our existing flooring. We made a line. We installed this piece of plywood onto that line. And the idea behind that is when we're installing our floor, their nails are driven this way. The hammer action is this way, but this is screwed right into the floor joist. So this floor is not going to be sliding and gapping and opening up while we build. And that's why this is here. We want to leave this in place. The slip tongue is in that wood there so that it will receive this, and that'll keep the end from lifting and moving and separating and creating a trip hazard over time, which is going to be perfect. The only thing left to do, and I hate to do this, but we're going to need a little bit of construction adhesive. Now, as a rule, I try not to use this product in my house during finished installations, because this stuff doesn't come out. And if you make a mistake with this, you've made a mistake that's going to last for the rest of your life. If you don't clean it up within the first 5 minutes of making a mess, this does not come off with any kind of solvent. The PL construction adhesives, there's different varieties. There's a 200, 400 series, but the PL Premium does not clean up. So beware of that. Be very particular when you put this down And the reason I'm gluing this one in place is because this is where I'm going to be changing direction. And when I change direction, I'm going to have two pieces of wood back to back, and there's no fastener here. So I don't want this to open up and be moving around. So we're going to glue this one in place, and I don't want to use any surface nails. So I'm simply going to glue that in place, and then start, when I drive this nail down, I'm going to pull the whole board flush, and when I come back around the other way, it'll be pretty much in place forever. So this is the Boss Stitch hardwood nailer. Tool rental, gotta love it. Tool rentals, you can get these things set up for 3/4 hardwood, 1/2 hardwood, bamboo, and engineered flooring. Those are 4 distinct different thicknesses. So they have 4 different settings for these plates that go on the bottom. Generally, the rental stores will have them a series of tools where they'll have a few of each available at any one time. And it loads from the top, real simple, just like any other staple machine that's out there. Take a couple of tracks, drop them in, and you're loaded. Boom, energized. That's simple. And the way we install, about every 6 inches you want to throw in a nail, okay? And because it's my first strip, I'm only going to nail where I've got plywood screwed down, just to make my life simple. And you want to give it a good firm shove. So I'm a big fan of every 6 to 8 inches. And really the goal here is to put the nylon plate on top of the finished wood, slide it right up against it, and set it so that it's not leaning one way or the other. That's the whole system. I am just using this motion here, okay? It's not necessary. Don't overkill it. If you hit this thing too hard, you'll end up putting dents in the front edge of your wood. So just nice and easy, okay? Just the wrist. Don't use the arm. If you start swinging with the arm, you're going to hurt something or someone, all right? So now we've demonstrated how the nail gun works. I'm going to demonstrate the hammer, the uses of it. You see the angle on that. The reason it's set like that is because this is what you use to move your flooring around. As long as you hold it on the ground, the part of the hammer that contacts the wood is always at the bottom of the wood, never near the finish. All right, so you can slide everything into place, close up all your gaps, tap everything in place, and then set your nailer down. This is where this gets fun. Nice, look at that perfect gap. That is how you do a joint, ladies and gentlemen. Aside from that, really the only secret that's left here is dealing with your H'ing, and that's a kind of a crazy concept, but what it is talking about where are the joints in the wood. You don't want to have anything that's reoccurring, like a pattern over and over and over in your floor. So if you put your wood together like this and every other board is 4 inches off, you're going to run into major problems. Now, generally speaking, hardwood flooring comes milled based on the strength and the straightness of a tree, so there's varying sizes. So you'll find that there won't be a whole lot of pieces in the box that are the same size. It's different than laminate or vinyl where everything's the same size. Everything here is different. So what I like to do is use as many of those long boards as possible to try to eliminate the need for too many little pieces. And hardwood comes in different grades, so you can actually buy them where they're all little pieces. And that's like leftover wood that's thrown in a box and sold as a hardwood floor. It looks like a really cheap puzzle when you're all done because there's nothing but joints. So if you buy quality for another couple bucks a square foot, you'll get boards that are 4, 6, 8 feet long, and that makes a beautiful floor. But now all we got to do is measure and cut. Yep, so what I've got 3 rows started. I'm going to actually go take 1 trip to the saw and do all the cuts for this because running back and forth is your killer. This is where all your time goes. So the more running back and forth you do, the harder it is. Now here's how you measure the same kind of system. We're going this way. Take your wood, turn it around, lift it up on edge, slide it over until it touches your baseboard, and then mark. So you're actually cutting this wood on your mark just a 1/16 shy of the actual size. Okay? that gives it all that room for expansion and contraction underneath your baseboard, okay, which is lovely. And it'll make sure that you can finish off with a really nice tight shoe mold and you don't have to use a great big thick ugly quarter round. So same thing, I'm going to turn it around, lift it up on edge, run it over till it's in contact with the baseboard. Mark that one there. That's 2 rows. And then I'm going to use this board here, okay. Now don't be concerned. I'm going to be cutting and using this groove part, and I'm going to be left with a clean cut. So I can't use that at the door, but I can use a clean cut to start a row anywhere else along the wall, so I'll actually set that piece aside and use it later. You don't want to have hardly any waste here, so whenever you're making an offcut, try to keep it to less than 4 inches if possible. Feel free to look through the box and get the perfect fit. Because we're running a little behind today with the project, so I'm going to eat while I work. Now, It's probably a bad one to show it on, but when you're installing your end pieces, just remember that when you have this angle, the distance from here to here is longer than from here to here. So set it like this, hold this wood tight on this corner, and then pull this side in, and it actually is slowly pushing the wood back until it's a perfect fit. And you'll always get a nice perfect fit when you do it that way. So just to make mention, the machine makes a very distinctive sound when it's out of staples. It takes a little practice to get used to hearing it. So my suggestion is, if this is the first time you're laying a hardwood floor, every few rows, just pull up the track here, double check and see how your staple supply is doing. Because when you hit it, the wood will be very snug, and it does fit pretty good compression. And it makes a dent, right? And it looks like there might be a staple there. So it can be a little deceiving. And you don't want to get all the way through a whole row of flooring, start the next row, and then you hit without any staples, and then 2 rows of wood will bounce and it'll start to open up. And that's when you'll figure out that you were doing it without staples. And I just thought I'd save you a little bit of grief. So here's how you figure out how to cut this. Because when you're done, you want to have it really tight to that wood, right? So what you do is you'll set it up like this and make your marker right on the edge, because that's where you want to cut your wood. Okay, you see that? And then you turn it around. That sets the thickness. Now set it in your groove. And this is why marker is awesome, because wherever you mark, that's the thickness of a blade. So when you're working with hardwood, use your marker to determine where you want the blade to go. So you can see I've got my blade will go there and here. And then you can use a square or really good fingers. Now I'm going to line up my blade with my marker. So I'm cutting exactly where my marker is. Always get it up to full speed before you make contact with the wood, especially hardwood. You can burn your saw out if you start embedding this in too early. Now, perfect. Okay, so this is ultimately the problem. This isn't square. So it fits here. It doesn't fit here. Yeah, nice. So unfortunately that means I have to cut the entire thing because I need to slide it in. So I gotta take another saw blade off. And the way I cut this wood really is going to tick off the safety trolls. Oh, hey, quick question for safety trolls while we're at it. What's more important, wearing safety shoes so that you don't step on a nail once in a while, or not wearing safety shoes so you don't need a knee replacement when you get older? Nice. Not bad for a chop saw. Now, I would probably want to say this. That's not the recommended technique for cutting a piece of hardwood, but generally speaking, I like to cheat because whenever my cut's less than 6 inches, why would I want to move the cord and set up another saw? We are approximately 1, 2, 4 rows from the wall. And this makes it really tricky. Now you'll see, professional floor installations, these guys end up making marks and dents all through the drywall when they put their flooring in. Because, honestly, that is really difficult to do. I can't get any closer with this machine. So now, the only way that we can go any further with a fastening system, when you get this close to the wall, is to put down that construction adhesive that we were talking about earlier, the PL Premium. And you can use a brad nail gun, like you would use on finishing trim. Okay, so this is exactly what you're going to see in condominium apartments or applications where you're putting hardwood on concrete. Now be careful, you can't put it everywhere there's concrete. It doesn't go in basements directly on the basement because there's too much moisture transfer there. But in an apartment building, it's actually quite handy because it's conditioned space above and beneath the concrete, so there's no moisture transfer. So what we're looking at is all these boards are the ones that we cut just a little while ago. So we can actually set that in the adhesive. Sorry, I forgot I'm going to use my hammer here. And we are going to tap this to close our gaps. And we're going to attach our brad nail. Now these are 18 gauge nails, 2 inch, all right? It's probably a little longer than I need, but I don't like to walk around with too many kinds of nails. And the idea here is we're gonna put the nail in the same location in that tongue as we would have right where that adhesive is. And it goes in the same every 6 inches, just like a staple. Now that nail isn't gonna hold anything down over time, but what it will do, it'll hold that wood into that adhesive until the adhesive is dry, and then that floor isn't gonna be opening up, moving around. If all you're using is brad nails, guaranteed that wood is going to start opening up and splitting on you. You know, you've always got this angle. You're going to have to practice a little bit so you're not nailing through the surface. Now I need one other thing here. My drill. My nail punch. And it's a perfect nail punch, and it is the Robertson drill bit that comes with my screw gun. I can set that on that nail. Here we go. You can use that technique for anywhere you find a nail sticking out. That's usually a pretty handy place to be. So in this situation, when you're getting to the door areas of your home, if you're removing flooring that exists and you're putting in hardwood, you're probably going to run into a situation where your door casings are lower because you would have had carpet or laminate or vinyl. In this case, it was a vinyl floor, but then they added plywood and then tile. So we're actually, even though we're putting in a 3/4 inch thick floor, we're gonna be a little thinner than the old trim. So there's gonna be a gap. But this is what we call a dovetail saw. If you've never seen one before, it switches around so that you can actually set your flooring in place, okay? Put your saw on that, and then you can cut. You could cut your trims with this fine-tooth saw. And if you're working on the other side, you just push down your little spring-loaded trap door, spin it around, and now it's another side saw. So this cuts right and left hand. It only runs just a little under 20 bucks. And if you don't have an expensive power tool and you're doing flooring in your home, This kind of tool here can save you a lot of time and money and give you a real professional finish. This way, once you've got that cut, all your flooring can slide underneath your trim, okay? And then you won't have a big ugly gap. It seems odd, but now I've taught you every technique you know to hardwood the entire room. How to start a nice transition, how to get underneath your trim, how to butt up and how to make your cuts, how to close it and nail it and glue it and pin nail it, how to finish up against the wall. The only thing we haven't talked about now is how to finish up around that heat grate. So we're gonna just do this. We're gonna change direction now so that you get the entire experience in one short little video and you don't have to hang around for the next 2 hours watching me do the same thing over and over and over again. Wow, beautiful. Now the advantage here is that when you're working with this flooring, it's nice to always have your hose coming from behind you. You're not tripping over it. We have the tongue here now, which fits into the groove of the old floor. Look what happens here. Like there's ridges and gaps. There's no way to close that nice and tight. Okay, and this is why we also want to consider our Hing, but we want to get our PL Premium in here now. And just to try to help keep things clean, I'm only going to glue the size of each board at one time. And like with any fine-tooth saw, it's more about the speed than the pressure. Okay, you have the option if you want to glue this in, but honestly, if both of these pieces of wood are glued to the floor, there's no need to have this tongue glued in. But if you want to, you could just lay it in the glue for a second, like that, and then stick it in. Now we have a transition. I just take my board, rest it in place, go back to our hammer, and now we've turned the wood in the opposite direction. There we go. Now remember I was talking about the angle of this? See how when we're changing boards in a different direction here, I'm finishing with my groove? When I set this on the floor and make contact with the wood, you see the gap at the top? I'm not actually contacting the finish because I have this on the ground. So I can hit that even standing up. I can slide it in and close it up nice and tight. And because the rest of this floor is already nailed in, it's not going to be moving around on me. So I was getting a little too comfortable and I never hit this one hard enough. My staple's sticking out. So now, my piece of wood, it's not going to be able to close. Got to get that recessed, so steal that drill bit again and hit it near the outside. Okay, you are not going to be able to drive it on an angle, so don't even attempt that. The goal is just to bend it down so that the wood can slide over top. So what we're going to do, we're simply going to mark this wood right here. I know, call me crazy. This is why we have a knife. Another time for another trick. Now, there's not a whole lot of strength in that wood there to fight with that knife. You see how it should just whittle it off? It's kind of like a bar of soap. I'm just taking a little bit. Okay? Now, done. One more trick. So in this situation, you might think, well, let's do what we did at the other end there. We'll cut the sliver. And that's an option. But honestly, when you're cutting that much of a sliver out of a piece of wood, what you want to do is you want to cut across, cut them down a couple of times. Because when you start here, you're more than likely going to split that piece off. And it'll twist and tear. Oh, I'm going backwards. The other option is if you can get underneath that casing, we'll get rid of some of this tongue here on the saw, so I can butt right up against the jamb. And then we'll install this wood. And then what I'll do is I'll make a fabrication for this little piece on my table saw later, and I'll just drop it in place. I only need the top piece of the wood. I don't need the full length. So I'll just take my table saw out, I'll rip down a piece and drop it in with the adhesive after the fact and just set it right in there, and that'll be perfect. Right here. That's it. Installed. We're using the grooves on all the wood to hold this in place. Isn't that crazy? The one thing about these grates that's interesting is this wood is a hardwood, so this is actually strong enough to be stepped on. Not strong enough to be putting furniture on it, I don't think. If you're going to be setting furniture on it, then definitely go with a metal grate. We have got 1-inch pieces and 13-inch. It's 4, right? Okay. So I'm going to go 4 pieces at 1 inch off of this, and then here we are going to keep the tongue, because when we install this, we want this tongue to go into here to hold this register in place. So measure right to the drywall and then mark about a 1/4 inch off. Okay. One, two. Yeah, I'm just using some full boards here. 1, 2, 3, because that's the end of the box. So this is a perfect place for adhesive. Because what we're going to do here is we're going to just set them in the adhesive and pull them nice and tight. Now, I'm not going to put a brad nailer in this until I get it all installed, because I don't want to run the risk of splitting all the wood up. Now that I got it all here, I'm going to actually go through the surface. But I'm going to nail through the surface where I know my base shoe is going to cover it. Hold your gun nice and tight to the wood. If you have any gap at all in there or not enough pressure, you're going to leave the head sticking out and you're going to have a mess to clean up later. We want to be careful that we're not putting too much force into this grill and these little nails. We want to just kind of be careful here. Come straight on this, close it up with your hands. Close it up nice in the middle. These ones I've actually cut so they're all the same size. So we're going to close the far side first and then work our way towards it. There we go. That keeps everything nice and tight. And we're going to let the nails, the staples, pull this joint tight. Well, there we go. That's pretty much all I got for tips and tricks for doing hardwood flooring. Now remember, every aspect of this video you can use in different scenarios, so as long as you know how to square things and glue things and screw things and nail things and cut things and measure things, you should be okay. Just remember, when you're doing a job like this, every time you put a fastener into something, you want to be completely happy before you're committed, okay? If you don't like what's going on, stop and take a step back and just go take a little break, think through it, and make sure that you're going to be completely satisfied once you've thrown that fastener in the floor. You don't want to come back when a job's all done and go, man, I really wish I would have taken more time with something. So yes, some cuts can be really frustrating and take a lot of effort before you get them right, but having it just perfect is worth the effort, okay? Thanks for joining us on this video. I hope you've got all the information you need so that you can renovate your home now and put in some beautiful brand new hardwood floors. Remember, this is site finished. There's nothing to do after you nail it down but sweep. So if you like this kind of content, give us a thumbs up, like this video. Comments and questions, even the safety trolls, are allowed in the comments below. We answer those every day, and we love to give those kind of questions to help you with your renovation project. Remember, our goal is to help you make a fortune renovating your home. And don't forget to join us on Instagram. That's new and exciting. We got a lot of really good engagement with our viewers that way, and we're looking forward to having you there. Don't forget to check the description for tools and comments and products and all that kind of stuff, and a link to our Shopify page so you can do shopping for brands that I love, okay? I've gone out and I've found products that we can supply for you and get you a better deal. Look for discount codes in the description of our videos. Look forward to seeing you next time. Well, hopefully by this time you had an opportunity to pick which kind of flooring you prefer. Don't be dissuaded if you have different conditions in your house. Most of these floorings can be installed whether it's in your basement, over concrete, or over an existing floor. So depending on your situation, you might choose one or the other, but always feel free to ask questions in the comment section below. We are here to help, and we have other videos on the subject matter, how to put subflooring in your basement. You know, is it okay to put vinyl over tile? What's waterproof, what isn't? There's a million questions and a million products out there. So not everybody gets the right answer for the same question in a different place. So on this channel, if you ask a question here, I will answer it myself, okay? I answer the technical stuff, no doubt about it. Feel free to throw that in the comment section below. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram. And if you like this video, give us a big thumbs up. We'd really appreciate that, because YouTube loves to hear that you guys are happy with what we're giving you, and we want to hear what you like so that we know what to give you more. All right? Fair enough. We will see you again in the next week's video.